Welcome to the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast, episode number 139. Hi, everyone. I'm Chris. Thank you for joining us.
And I'm Jill. Chris and I are your hosts for this podcast and the founders of the Becoming Ellie community. Today, we're talking with Wendy Green. She says, we're never too old to set another goal.
Wendy is the host of the Hey Boomer podcast. She talked with us about making life changes so that we can live our best lives, regardless of our age.
Hey, Chris, before we get to our interview with Wendy, we should explain why we're called Becoming Ellie.
Good idea. We decided to name our community Becoming Ellie because Ellie was the Norse goddess of aging who beat Thor in a wrestling match. Jill and I thought we want to be like Ellie.
Yes, we do. You can find out more about the Becoming Ellie community and this podcast at our website, becomingellie.com. And Ellie is spelled E-L-L-I.
Be sure to sign up for our newsletter while you're there. That way you'll know about our new episodes and anything else that's new with us. Let's go to the podcast.
Chris and I met Wendy Green in Denver when we were at Podcast Movement, the conference for podcasters. We hit it off right away. We are all women of a certain age who host podcasts and discovered we have a lot in common. Chris and I realized very quickly that Wendy should be a guest on our podcast.
Yes, Wendy Green is the host of the live show and podcast, Hey Boomer. Her goal is to serve an inspirational role for people 55 to 75 who are looking for ways to live meaningful, fulfilling lives. Wendy wants to help people see that they are never too old to set another goal or dream a new dream.
Wendy lives in Greenville, South Carolina. She has 2 children and 4 grandchildren. Hi, Wendy. It's great to get to talk to you again and to see you.
It's so good to see you guys too. As I said, I miss you guys.
We had a lot of fun in Denver and I feel like I learned a lot there.
Yes, for sure.
So your podcast is Hey Boomer. Can you tell us why you decided to start a podcast and what it's about?
Sure. Yeah. I started the podcast in April of 2020. A month after we got shut down with the pandemic. And of course, I had been working and, was shut down myself. And what I thought at that point, as I was walking around my house and wondering, would I ever get out again? I was thinking, okay, so how do I want to feel? I want to feel relevant. I want to feel like I still matter. I want to feel like I can make a difference. And I knew at that moment that there were going to be so many of us that needed to feel that as we were facing this lockdown and isolation and knowing how much more difficult it is to find another job if you wanted another job after 55. And also there was this book out, called Okay Boomer and that whole slang thing. And I was like, no, it's Hey Boomer. We are an active, vibrant member of society. We were very active when we were young. We now have more time and hopefully finances to be active as well. So I decided to start it. Actually, Jill, I started it as a Facebook Live because I didn't know what else to do.
Okay.
And then I learned that I could live stream to different platforms. So Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And then I learned, I can take this to podcast. So it's been a journey along the way.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow. Well, Wendy, when you started your podcast, we were all losing independence and having to stay away from others at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. How did starting Hey Boomer help you and others get through this difficult time?
Oh, what a great question. Yeah, because my mother, she's now 93 and still living independently. And so it was primary importance to me to stay as safe as possible so that if she needed me, I could be there. So it helped me by building ways to communicate. You know how when we started the pandemic, like everybody was getting on Zoom, right? And having these happy hours or these family meetings or whatever. And I started connecting with people that I would never have met otherwise. Yeah, the podcast has introduced me to people all over the world, people like you guys. And, I have met the most amazing people. And And the cool thing is, Chris, it has broadened my horizons, things that I'm interested in. I'm able to find experts in that and talk to them. And so my audience is now engaged because they get to come on live and chat with us as we're going and, ask questions and make comments. And so we're really building a community. Now, I also have an online community called the Boomer Banter, where we get together once a month and talk about topics and, go into breakout rooms and really dig deep and come back. And so it's really been a great community builder for me and for the audience.
That's great.
That sounds fun.
It is fun.
So besides the podcast, I know you're certified as a life coach and that you offer coaching services to help people find their vision for the next chapter of life. And we just said your goal is to provide inspiration to empower people to live the meaningful, purposeful life they want to live. So how do you do that? And why is that difficult for so many of us?
You would think, right? We all in our careers go, oh, when I'm 65 or maybe when I'm 70, right? I'm going to retire. And what happens is, particularly people that have been professionals, they get to that point and they don't know what to do with 16 hours in their day of unstructured time and nobody depending on them for any outcomes, any deliverables. And so it becomes a really difficult time for them. And so we go through a process of exercises where we talk about, what was your role, right? So whenever you went out, people would say, so what do you do? Well, I'm a trainer. I'm a IT person. I'm a this, I'm a that. Well, now if they say, what do? You say, I'm retired. And the conversation kind of stops. They may go a little bit of, oh, that's nice. How much golf do you play?
I wish I could say that. Yeah. People will comment that, oh, it's great. And then the conversation shifts to another topic and that's the end of it, right?
Right. And so what we do is we start to define we go through an exercise called writing your life story. And I give them lots of prompts for that. It gives them an opportunity to look back over their lifetime, even like when they were still in, primary school, and talk about what were some of the things that they felt good about doing, that they really got excited about. Maybe it was art, or maybe it was some kind of sports, or maybe they were in debate club, or maybe they played an instrument, whatever it was, but they put it aside, right? Because now I'm a responsible adult. I'm raising my family and I'm doing all these things and I don't have time to paint or make music or, get involved with my community, but now you do. And so it gives them the opportunity to look back and go, I really liked that at one point. And what stops people also is that they think their friends or their family is going to say, really? You're going to paint? Like, come on, you're not an artist. And we need to turn those voices off and say, it doesn't matter if I'm an artist or not. If I enjoy it, I'm going to do it, because it's about me at this point. It's about what makes me feel good now. I've been there for everybody else. Now I get to go explore other things. And it may be that you're not in love with art like you used to be, but you at least try it. And if that door doesn't work, there's other doors to walk through.
Yes, that's so true.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The unstructured day is, I think, really hard mentally for people.
Very hard.
When you get up in the morning and you have nothing on your calendar, so it's easy to just sort of fritter away your time. You sit there and you play catch up on your Word with Friends games, and then you go read something online, and then you decide, well, maybe it's time to eat a meal. Go wander into the kitchen. And then it's like, oh, maybe I should go to the grocery store.
Right.
We used to call that every day is Saturday.
Well, but it also doesn't feel like Saturday because Saturday was a chore day, right?
True. You'd run all your errands that
day. And what
day.
Jill is describing is I'm just trying to fill my time. And that's hard to do because at the end of the day, do you feel like you are accomplished, that you achieved anything, that you were productive, or whatever word describes what's important, what's your value. So we'll look at your values too, So if it's important to you to feel engaged and meaningful, is Words with Friends a way you're feeling engaged? If it is, by all means, take that time. But if it's not, if you need other engagement where you're actually volunteering or you're tutoring kids or you're mentoring young women who are entering the workforce or whatever it is that will help you feel engaged and meaningful, start to find ways to do that and contribute. Because, you'll reach the end of the day, right, Jill? You reach the end of the day and you're like, what the heck did I do all day?
Right. I mean, I think that does not help a person maintain cognitive health to just sort of wander aimlessly through your day like that. I mean, it's fine to do that once in a while, obviously, but as a regular thing, I just don't think it's a healthy way to approach any time of life, really.
Yeah, I don't either. And, what you guys talk about, the physical exercise, it's easy once you're not working and you've been trying to squirrel in that time while you're working to now say, oh, I have all this time. I don't have to get up early after the work. I don't really feel like.
Not to really harp on this, but I do remember when I would be working and I would think, if I could just start my day with a cup of coffee and sit and read my book and not have to do anything for however long, I would be so happy. But it turns out the constraint of having to actually get up and go to work made that more of a luxury. I mean, when you actually can do something like that every day, it's not a luxury anymore. It's just
normal.
And so it's not like, oh, this wonderful time that I envisioned it to be.
Yeah. Well, and for me, it gets in the way, like I love to start with my cup of coffee and read a little bit, but I'll get up in the morning and I'll say to myself, okay, put on your workout clothes now so that when you finish your coffee, you'll go work out. And no, I don't really feel like putting on my workout clothes now. I think I'll just start with my coffee. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's too late.
It's noon and you're still in the morning getting up ready.
Yep.
Yeah. I know a lot of people like to work out first thing in the morning because it gets it out of the way. And that way you're, it's done. It's behind you. But when you don't have a lot on your calendar, it can be harder to get that start. Wendy, I'm curious about your podcast title, Hey Boomer. Now, obviously, your podcast is geared to both men and women, baby boomers. Do you think men and women handle life changes differently?
Do they handle them differently? Yes, they do handle them differently. Yes. And
like the transitions,
I was actually surprised about that, because a lot of my coaching clients have been men who did get stuck in that, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do with 16 hours of awake time? But there was actually a research project done, I think it was the University of Michigan, that found that when men hit that transition, a lot of them are just done. They're like, good, I can just relax and go to the golf course and be done. And women, we tend to find our stride at that point. And then we want to get engaged and we want to be more involved and more meaningful. We've been working and caregiving, raising kids and raising husbands.
I wasn't expecting you to say that.
And so now it's like, wait a minute. Now it's my time to do for me. And I actually did a survey myself because I was like, that can't be right. Men are smarter than that. They need to stay involved too. And my survey came out the same, that it seems like men are more willing to just be done, which was interesting to me.
Well, and then to think about the different generations, do you think that people who are Gen X, and I say that as we have women who are over 50, and that's is starting, they're the next generation that's turning 50 and dealing with a lot of the mental and physical changes. Do you think women who are in that a younger generation handle things differently than, say, the boomer generation?
Yeah, and I think the younger boomers do as well. Their reality is they probably can't retire at 65 because their lifespan is longer. And, the fact that we're in our 60s or 70s, our lifespan is longer too. But, the idea of running out of money, if you're going to live to 100, is going to keep people working longer. So I think there was a book I read called The 100-Year Life.
Okay.
And it talks about...
Do you remember who wrote that?
It was a social scientist and an economist out of England.
Okay, I'll look that up.
Yeah, it was really an interesting
100-year life. Interesting.
100-year life. And basically what they said is that particularly now for the millennials and Gen Z, they're going to have a work trajectory that's more of a ebb and flow, where they'll be working for a while, saving, and then they're going to take time off. And they may semi-retire for a little while. They may go back to school. They may travel, or experience other cultures, and then they're going to re-engage and work again. And that'll, save some more again. And so they'll have like mini retirements in between their working careers, which for those of us in our generation, we feel like, well, you can't do that because, that's a gap in your resume and nobody's going to hire you after that. But if that becomes more of a reality because people live longer and they don't want to work until they're 70 or 80 with no breaks, then it does make a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And because the technology changes so rapidly, it's almost like you have to take a break to learn the new stuff,
Boy, we can talk about that, huh?
Really?
Yeah. I know a friend of mine, just his boss told him that he was wanting to take some unpaid time. And he said, oh, you can take up to a month. I don't care if you want to go for unpaid. And my friend was like, I was thinking like half a day or and I said, you know what? People are fixating on this idea of like getting sabbaticals in, that you take off a good chunk of time.
And it's a mental refresh.
And his boss is 28. That ties in with what you're saying, which is actually probably a very healthy way to approach a career and life, to not tie yourself into something that you have to do for 40 years. And
I think it's a mental refresh, and it exposes you, just like when you go to college, you think you're going into social work and suddenly you end up in IT because you get exposed to different things.
Right.
And you say, oh, that's something I want to do. Well, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, that may not be what you want to do anymore. And so you need to retrain and get involved in something else. So I think it's pretty healthy.
Yes. When I was trying to pick a course of study when I was 18, I could have never, ever envisioned the internet and being on a podcast and having that, just be so normal to talk to people in different parts of the world. It just seems. And so I think of the other generations following the boomer generation, their visions are so different of what their age will be when they start to face transitions. It's a big transition.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's so healthy to have the idea of maybe multiple transitions.
Our audience is specifically women. And do you have any advice pointed just for women? Is there anything specific that you would advise us to do?
Wow, we have all kinds of stuff we need to do. I mean, I think particularly in our generation, we were kind of stuck in the middle. Our parents were coming out of the World War II time and everything was great. And there was this very clear role definition, dad worked, mom was home. Maybe she did a couple of things, but she was never the major breadwinner, and then we come along and it's like, whoa, you guys can do anything you want to do. You can be a doctor or a lawyer. You can be a flower child. You can, have free love and free sex. You can do, right. You can have love the one you're with or don't love the one it was women's possibilities just exploded for us. And we didn't have any role models for what that was like. And so I think that a lot of us in this generation are struggling with who are we now? Who are our role models? And I think we are our own role models. Right? Our girlfriends, people like you and people like me that talk about these things on our shows, we are role modeling for the generation of boomer women to say, you still can define it. It was hard when the women's movement came on and said, you can be whoever you want to be. And we were like, no, but we're still raising kids and we're still paying bills and we're still,
Yeah, you can be whatever you want to be, but just
you can have it all, but not all at once.
Exactly. And so now we're struggling with, well, who do we want to be and how can we be it now? It's just riding that wave of rediscovery is really, don't be too hard on yourself. Try and talk to other people and get help if you need it.
Well, that brings me up to the next question. On our podcast, we talk a lot about being fit and strong. And certainly part of that is mental fitness and a healthy mindset. Do you have any advice on cultivating a healthy mindset and how we can do that? Can we change our minds and our thoughts?
Yes, we can change our minds and our thoughts. But as we all know, change is hard.
Yes.
Yeah. Ways to do that. Whew.
Yeah. Cultivating a healthy mindset is difficult some days when you're having a tough time.
It is. I journal, which helps me. Some days I have nothing to say, so I report. And other days, well, like this weekend. Okay. So it was Saturday, and I do work every day, sometimes 7 days a week, which is too much. But Saturday I decided, no, I'm not working. So Saturday was doing chores in the morning, and then I sat down to read, and I took a nap, and I woke up and I was like, oh, I feel tired and alone, and I should get myself up and go out and see people. And I was doing that mind game with myself, saying, this isn't good. You need to get up. You need to go out. You need. And I harp on that word because when I coach people, there's a big difference between need and want. And I was able to kind of step back and say to myself, no, you don't need to do any of that. What you want to do is take a day off and relax and read. And that's okay. I mean, you don't have to be with people all the time. Sometimes it's nice to have that alone time. So I think we have to ask ourselves questions when we start to get into that mindset of, I'm not good enough. I'm not productive enough. I'm being lazy, whatever. We need to stop and say, what do you want? How do you want to feel? And what do you want to do that will help you feel that way? And remind yourself that you are a human being. You don't always have to be a human doing.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I think, journaling helps me, but also those self questions. And if you really get stuck, call a girlfriend and she'll ask you those questions. Why are you doing that to yourself? You're just shoulding on yourself. Stop it.
Oh yeah. The should is,
shoulda, coulda, woulda. Yep.
Yeah. And we do that. We do that to ourselves.
It's so difficult. We do. Well, I like the idea of journaling. And I've forgotten, I used to do that a lot and I got away from it recently. I think I'm going to get back into that because that does help you to clear your mind and helps me anyway to kind of focus on where I'm going, what I want to do. And instead of that circular kind of shoulda, coulda stuff. So thank you.
Do you write by hand?
Oh, I do.
Paper, pen?
Yeah, paper, pen. I sit there with my coffee in the morning.
It's not the same feeling as typing, is it?
It's not. And what I find, you're right, Chris, that circular stuff, that when I'm writing it down, I start to ask myself questions and then answer those questions, and it gets it out of my head. It gets it out of that circular talk into, oh yeah, that's right.
I was just reading an article there is a difference in your brain between writing with pen and paper as opposed to typing. There's something about that the act of writing stimulates more creativity. It affects
Absolutely.
You differently.
I have to agree with that.
For sure. Yeah. And I think it connects the emotional part of your brain with the creative part of your brain as well when you're writing. The one thing we had an declutter conversation on my show a couple weeks ago. So I saved my journals and I look back through them, but then I thought, what if I don't want my kids to read these journals? Right. So it's nice to be able to look back and go, oh yeah, I've been down this road before. I figured this out once. I can figure this out again. But it's also probably a really good idea to either decide to get rid of them or to put them in some kind of a box that says, do not open, just throw this away.
Yeah, especially those ones that I wrote when I was 19 and being very melodramatic.
right?
And the ones where you're doing journaling and you're complaining about someone and you don't really feel that way about that person. It's just in that moment that was bugging you. And you're right. You never know. You don't want other people. So decluttering is also a good way to kind of cultivate a healthy mindset. You don't feel the weight of all the burden of everything.
And in fact, we're going to talk about that on the banter tonight, how to declutter your mind as well as decluttering your home.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, because we do store, past hurts and past angers and past relationships and all that stuff we still keep. And you don't need to hold on to that.
We do. And there are things that we go back to over and over and over again in our heads. And that is a tough one. Maybe that's where
random
journaling.
Comments that hurt your feelings. It's hard for me to let go of those sometimes. And they're usually something that people didn't even realize what they were, the impact that it would have on me in that moment.
Yeah, that's a really good example as well. And we, why did we take that personally? Was that about us or was it about them?
Right.
Yeah. But decluttering our mind and past hurts and stuff is not easy.
Meditation, I guess, might help with that. But meditation brings up a lot of some people do that well and other people just can't stand to do meditation. But I guess all of this sort of leads into stress, and women who are over 50 may still be raising children, or they may be raising grandchildren, and they may also be dealing with elderly parents. And so there's a lot of stress, and they may still be working because, as we just said, it's not like everyone retires at 55 or even 65. How do you help people deal with that, with dealing with the stress of sort of everyday life?
Exercise is one, right?
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
You guys talk about that. Exercise is a good way to deal with stress. And I know that I feel better after I go to the gym and do a workout. Stress, again, I think meditation could help if you are a meditator. But I think it's reframing. Right. So I'm stressed because my mother still needs help and calls me every day about something, and maybe multiple times a day. And, my kids will tell me I should do this or I shouldn't do that. So there's like all this other stuff, and then how to monetize the show and like all of that. Right.
Right.
And so I think some of it is reframing and maybe saying, well, a lot of people don't still have their mother. And so, how can I give her the grace of she's 93, right? And
right.
she's still trying to use the darn computer. I wish she would stop because I'm her geek squad, but God bless her. She's still doing it. And so give her grace. My kids, when they tell me you shouldn't say this to this grandchild or say it like this or whatever, and I take it personally, like, what? I'm a good grandmother. I was a good mother. Like, what? And then I say, okay, in their minds, they're trying to help, right? They want me to have a loving relationship, and they're just trying to help. And just accept it that way. And, so I think a lot of it is just reframing what is the message we're telling ourselves. And sometimes none of that's going to work. You're just going to feel stressed. And so feel it, In fact, I was talking to my daughter this morning, and she says, Mom, sometimes there's something called toxic positivity. So it's like, if you feel like crap, then get through it. Don't stay there, but feel the feeling. You're stressed. It makes sense. You have a lot going on. Feel the feeling.
Feel the feeling.
Well, that goes back to the should, because it's very easy to say, I'm stressed, but I should be carefree. I shouldn't be worrying
exactly.
about my parent or my children or my paycheck or whatever.
But you are. And
right.
So, okay.
So, yeah.
Feel it. And then what's next?
Well, I'm thinking about feeling the feeling with my next question here is about dealing with loss. And that's something that happens in everyone's life. But when it happens to you, or in my case, happens to me, it feels very personal, whether it's losing a job, the death of a loved one, or, a divorce. All those things can really trigger a struggle internal struggle. Do you have some advice for our listeners if they're in the moment of dealing with a loss?
Yeah. Dealing with a loss is very hard. Even you didn't mention pets, dealing with loss of a
Well,
pet.
I was thinking about pets because that's my most recent.
Yeah. And that's very hard.
And sometimes you feel with losing a pet that, again, I shouldn't feel so bad. It was only a pet, but man.
It's probably more intimately close to you than anybody in your life, because they're there when you wake up. They're there when you go to sleep. They're there to greet you at the door. They never criticize you.
Mm-hmm.
They are very nice that way.
Yes.
Right? They depend on you for everything. So I think there is no roadmap for dealing with loss. It comes in waves.
Yes.
I remember when I lost my last cat, and I would just break down in tears. Just break down in tears for no reason. No, it was a reason. I was like dealing with loss. When my dad passed, I would sit on the floor in the shower and cry. And again, it was like, feel the feeling. You have to go through it. There is no timeline. There is no prescribed way to deal with loss. We all deal with it differently. And whatever the loss was, a job, like you said, whatever the loss was, is impactful on each of us in a different way.
Yeah.
Friends may reach out and say, what can I do for you? What do you want them to do? Some of us just want to be alone. Some of us be like, can I just talk to you about it? I just want to talk about my loss without you trying to fix it, because you can't fix it.
Right.
It is a loss. I feel it. So
there's no shortcut when you're dealing with grief, is there?
There is none.
And I would think that people who have lost a job or lost a career or whatever, that would be a good time to actually work with someone like you on figuring out the next step.
Next part of the life.
What's the next thing in my life, or what do I actually want to do now? I mean, that would be.
I think you're absolutely right, because a lot of times what happens when we lose a job is we say to ourselves, well, so I've been in training and development. Well, that's what I've done. I'm training and development. So that's what I'm going to look for. And
that's who I am. That's my personal identity.
Right. And what if you start to think about, what did I like about training and development? What didn't I like about it? What did I like about the last company I worked in? And what didn't I like about it? Instead of just going immediately to the job boards and applying for everything, you could be more strategic in what you're applying for. And you could be more strategic in what you tell your friends you're looking for, so they can listen for other opportunities for you as well. So I think that is a great time to stop and take some time. There's a book called Transitions that I use in my coaching, and it talks about the ending, and that's, of course, the job loss is the ending. Then it talks about something called the neutral zone, where you take that time to explore, what do you want to do? Who are you? What worked for you? What didn't work for you? What do you want to try? It's a time of exploration. And then you go to the new beginning. And there may be multiple new beginnings, because you don't know exactly if that one's going to fit or if this one's going to fit. And so you try them out and you do, little taste tests, let's say.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So if you're making changes in your life, or you're moving on to the next big thing, is it sufficient to have positive mental attitude, positive thoughts? What if you really aren't feeling all that positive? Is this like one of those fake it till you make it kind of things? You do hear that,
You do hear that. You do hear that. And, no, I mean, there are times, right? If you're going into a networking event, let's say, and you have lost a job and you want to meet people, you're not going to go in there like, a sad person.
Yeah, don't be doom and gloom.
Right. But you may have to work on yourself before you go there. And, one of the things that's interesting, right? We write our resume and we say, well, I was the director of training here and I, did IT training here and I did this and I did this. But if you were to write it like a bio, like somebody might write your bio for you and say, Wendy was the director of training for this organization that did high risk management. And she led trainings on what to do if you're kidnapped or what to do if you're in a active shooter situation. And, so you start writing these things down and you go, wow, that's kind of interesting. And if I said that to people when I met them in a networking event, they might be like, oh, she's somebody I want to talk to, instead of, yeah, okay, well, my last job was director of training. Okay.
Yeah, with a little more detail.
Plus it psychs you up because you start to look at yourself with different eyes and go, yeah, I did all of that. I was pretty good at my job, and we sometimes don't give ourselves that credit, especially if we've lost a job. It's one thing if we're still working and looking for something else, but if we've lost a job or we've left a career, a lot of times our self-confidence really goes down because we don't think about all of the amazing things, and it doesn't have to be like huge. You started a group of women in your organization just so that women felt supported and had a safe place to talk in their organization. There are so many ways that you help daily in your work life that you don't give yourself credit for on a regular basis. And I think if you sat down and wrote about them as a bio in a, conversational way, not in a resume way, you might be surprised at how terrific you really are.
Wow. Yeah.
What about people? I don't know. What do you say when people complain that they're too old to do something? I'm too old to try that, something new or whatever. How do you approach that, Wendy?
Well,
you've never heard anyone say that to you, right?
That's why I start and end every show with, you are never too old to set another goal or dream a new dream. It's so easy to say. I mean, I was telling you guys how, I've got some aches and pains now, right? And it would be easy to say, it's just aging. And I hate it when I hear people say, aging is not for sissies and right. And all that kind of stuff. No, we're aging from the moment we're born.
That's true.
And so, yes, our bodies change. Absolutely. Our bodies change. We also gain more wisdom as we get older, and we have made more contributions to our work and our families and our society. And now it's just learning how to adjust what we can do. So I am not hiking in the way I used to hike because my back hurts if I try and push too much or go too far, So does that mean I can't hike anymore? No, I can still go out in the woods and take shorter hikes and take walking sticks, which I would never have used before. I'm too vibrant to use a walking stick. No. Use a walking stick now. You want to get out in the woods? Go,
You make adjustments.
Yeah, make adjustments. Don't just say, I can't do it anymore. There are plenty of things that you can still do. What is it you want to do? Again, what do you want to do? I love to dance, and I go downtown on the weekends where they play live music. But do I do like those fast rock and roll dances anymore? That hurts my back. But I'll get out there and...
Not tons of jumping anymore.
Yeah, right? But I'll get out there and I'll move to the music. And if they do a line dance, oh, that's goofy, but it's fun. Go and do a line dance, You can't stop, because then you are buying into that myth of being too old. And then what are you going to do for the next 20 years? Sit on the couch?
I went to a intro to Pilates class recently, and the instructor was asking us what we like to do besides possibly doing Pilates. And the one woman said she was there because she hates, and this was at the gym, She hates the gym. She hates all the weights and the machines and everything. She just likes to get on the elliptical. But she was going to try Pilates. And I said, well, I'm the complete opposite. I love the weights and the machines, and I like doing that. And I'm just looking for something additional to do. Conversation went on, and then the woman who said she hated the machines, somebody said something about doing a bicep curl with a 15-pound dumbbell. And she said, well, if we could do that, we wouldn't be here. And I was like, well, I can do that. But I thought, all right, I'm not getting into this. But it was just it just struck me that we were both doing the exact same thing and coming at it from completely different mindsets. And we left still having those different mindsets. I don't know.
I'll be curious to see if she comes back.
It would be, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
so anyway, it was just sort of funny that.
But it's interesting. You do run into that. And so, kudos to her for at least trying it. But if you're trying it with an attitude of, I hate this, how much benefit are you going to get from it?
Yeah, well, that sort of ties into what kind of problems do people have with aging? And when you're working with them, do you have to address that in some way? Like, what do people need to figure out about retiring or setting new goals, that kind of thing?
We do work on that, because we have to first unpack what we think of when we think of aging, right? You hear a lot of talk these days about ageism. And the truth is we're all ageist. We all have that internal ageist going on, right? We have to unpack that and question, where did those thoughts come from? And obviously they came from, the previous generation, and they come from the TV commercials, and, there's all kinds of drugs for things that hurt.
Yes, that's true.
But I think we have to redefine what aging means to us. And for me personally, I also think, because of my kids and my grandkids, I think, what do I want to model for them as being an older person? I'm never going to deny that I'm an older person. I just turned 70. So yeah.
You'll always be old to your grandkids. I mean,
right?
That's just by definition, right?
Right. And, I go on hikes with them, and sometimes they help me over tough spots. And, I think that's kind of cool that they're like, oh, see, I can be helpful to grandma. And she hasn't decided she can't do this anymore. I slow them down a little bit, but we're spending time together. I don't know. It's a tough question, Jill, about aging, because we all are aging. Like I said, from the time we're born, we're all aging.
Right. That's true.
And I think it's an acceptance, and it's just, again, it's redefining. I mean, what do you guys think when you think about getting older?
Well, I keep trying to embrace it, but I know I can't do what I did when I was 50 or 55 or even 60. Things have to morph a little bit. And, and as I look forward, trying to picture, how can I still remain active and have a healthy mindset? I have to change a little bit in how I'm doing things. I'm thinking, like, especially physical exercise, because to me, that's how I want to stay fit and strong. It's difficult sometimes to keep moving when you just don't feel like it. And do you have any advice on how to get started when you're not feeling motivated? I would love to hear. I mean, you're a life coach. You have all the answers, Wendy. Because I do feel like there's a lot more aches and pains, but how do I get over that? Do you have any tricks for gaining energy when you're feeling down in the dumps?
Gosh, you guys are asking me some hard questions.
I know. Well, I'm always looking for inspiration and motivation, because sometimes you're just not feeling it. And I know that once I start exercising, I start to feel better. But sometimes just that starting can be a difficult thing.
It can be. It absolutely can be. And so I think it kind of circles back to the beginning of this conversation when you said you had 16 hours in the day, and what are you going to do? And so you make yourself a schedule. And if your schedule says 8:00, I'm going to the gym, or 4 p.m, I'm going to the gym, it's like a doctor's appointment. You put it on your schedule. And so prepare, pull your stuff out, because you're going to feel better once you get there. Now, I do think it is easier if you know you're going to go with somebody or see somebody there.
Yes. The power of community, right?
The power of community, the power of accountability, like if you don't go, Jill's going to be looking for you and you've let her down and, so you would never do that. So I do think it's helpful, but it's also got to be internal. What's your why? What's your why for going? And for you, it's you want to stay fit and strong for the next 20 years. And so the way to do that. You've been doing it for a while. You've just got to make that commitment to yourself. And sometimes it is kick yourself in the butt and get out there. Sometimes it has to be that way. The motivation isn't there. And sometimes you just got to kick yourself out the door.
And I think sort of just addressing that, I had this aha moment recently is that I used to, many years ago, I would work all day and then I would go to the gym and do my workout. Then I would go home and be done because that was how my schedule worked. I couldn't go in the morning because whatever. That was how I did my day. But as my schedule became more free, everyone says you should do your workout in the morning. And so I get into that whole thing and then that I haven't gotten there. So then it's 10 o'clock and it's like, oh, well, I didn't get to the gym this morning. And all of a sudden I thought, I always liked working out later in the day. I don't have to go at 6, but nothing says I have to be there by 8 a.m. If I want to go at 2 p.m,
right,
that is perfectly okay. There's no rule that says you must do this in a certain way. Nothing says you must do anything. Like if I want to go to the gym and all I want to do is go, like the woman said, all she wants to do is just jump on the elliptical. That's fine if that's what you want to do. But you just have to sort of recognize this is what I want. And at some point, maybe you move beyond that. But
how did that feel to have that aha?
Oh, it was like, great. I can quit worrying. I could quit feeling like I should be at the gym by, 8 a.m. I just like, why do I feel like that? Just because that works for other people doesn't mean it works for me. I just sort of was remembering how my schedule used to be. And it was that way because that was how work and life dictated it to be. But I never complained about going in the evening. And in fact, I used to have one of my favorite times to go to the gym used to be to go Friday evening because people were out doing things. The only ones who would be in the gym would there'd be some people using the, I'm going to say the old people would be using the cardio equipment. And there would be the young guys who were down lifting weights and being the bros in the weight room, before they went out because if they finished at 9 o'clock at night, that was their getting ready to go out before whatever. But for me, it was fantastic because the gym was pretty much quiet because, the young guys aren't going to care what I'm doing. And I could just wander around the gym and just do anything I wanted. I loved going then, but it doesn't really occur to me anymore that I could go at 9 o'clock in the evening.
I know. And isn't it nice to acknowledge that you have figured out I liked going in the evening or later in the day?
Yeah.
And so,
I wouldn't go now at 9 o'clock because that probably would be getting close to my bedtime, but
yeah, right. But 2 or 4, something like that before the crowd set in.
Yes.
Yeah. I just was sort of like, oh, I don't have to be there when everyone says you should go to the gym.
I know. You have to find what works for you. That's great.
I do. Also, I was listening to Peter Attia, his website or his podcast. I don't know if you know Peter Attia. He's a doctor and does longevity things, and he is really big on exercise. And he says basically what you need to do is figure out what you want to do in your last decade of life. So if you want to be because you recognizing that you are physically going to decline, but you want to preserve strength. So you got to decide what those goals are so that what you're doing as a younger person allows you to reach those goals at your I forget what he calls that last decade, but
start with the end in mind.
Yes, start with the end in mind, because once you get past, if you're not, when you're 25 and you're running races or you're competing in sports or things, those are your goals. I want to be faster. I want to win the game. I want to whatever. But eventually you quit having those and it's just, you're working out. And why am I working out? But what you figure out is, in my last decade of life, I want to be able to get off the floor. I want to be able to pick up a grandchild. I want to be able to climb stairs. I want to be able to I want to balance. I don't want to be at risk of falling.
Right.
That's your why. That is your why.
And that is your why, but it's a long-term goal. But so even if you're 40 years old, because obviously the things that you're saying you want to be able to do, let's say at 90, you can do without even thinking about it when you're 40, but you've got to still work on figuring out how to preserve all of that as you age so that when you are 90, you can do all those things.
Right.
And he gives all these talks about how to do it, but it's interesting because that's not a way that most of us ever think about approaching our fitness. We just think, I'm not 20
anymore.
Yeah, I'm not 20 anymore.
Yeah.
Well, and that's brilliant too, but it's hard because you're right. At 40, you think, I'm invincible. I can still do all these things. And so it's hard to imagine that it's going to be hard to go up and down stairs.
Right. And we tend to think, well, that will never be us.
Right.
Well, and at 40, when you're a woman, you feel a lot different than when you're 55 and a woman. It just
after menopause
menopause, there's some changes there. And also just, each decade seems like there's different things that you think about and you try to imagine your life. I think that exercise plays a role at every decade. Especially like what you just said, Jill, about the longevity. How do you want to be that last 10 years of your life? I know personally, I don't want to be a burden to my children. I want to be as independent as possible.
Yeah.
I want to be like Wendy's mom, and I want to live by myself and call my kid 5 times a day.
This computer, how do I log in?
I don't know how to send this attachment. Okay, we've written this down 24 times, but we'll do it again.
But you know what? A lot of the millennials or the young Gen Xers probably say that about the boomers. Not everybody. Totally, technology is going to change again. A whole nother. I mean, when I think of artificial intelligence, and we don't even know 10 years from now what is the new technology. It's just like constant learning and trying to stay cognitively alert. Too.
I know. And do you find that sometimes you'll pick up your phone to do something and you'll think, how did I do that for?
Yeah, especially when there's been an upgrade. And it's like, oh, this is different. I hate when they change it.
That is something about talking about feeling like about aging is when I realize that I am now the person that my son and daughter-in-law feel perfectly free to reach over and take the phone out of my hand and do things for me.
Right? And you're like, no, just
at first I was very indignant. And then I thought, okay, this is just them being impatient with me, or they're making assumptions. That's the ageist part of everything. But I try not to get too irritated by it.
But they are making assumptions. And I try to talk to my kids about that and tell them, look, I hope you will be patient with me. You see that I'm struggling to be patient with my mom, and yet she's doing the best she can do. She never grew up with technology. They didn't even have TVs when she was growing up. So I'm trying to be patient with her. I hope that you will be patient with me because things change so fast. And making fun of us, I really resent that, the making fun of people getting older, because I guess I take it personally. I'm like, no, I'm a smart, intelligent, capable woman. And this is new.
Yeah. Well, and you have to keep a sense of humor about it, because you're right. When you think your mom never grew up with television as a child, and we never grew up with the internet as children, our kids think what their kids are going to be making fun about them, I don't know. It's just funny when you think of the different things.
Oh, well, I think part of that is just the way of generations throughout forever.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is like the example I give is like, I have a light in my house that's like, 12, 15 feet high. Right. And so it went out. Well, I live alone. I didn't think it was a good idea for me to get on the ladder and go up to the top of the ladder. And so I called my son. I said, I need you to come help me change a light bulb. And they thought that was hysterical. Really, Mom? You can't change a light bulb? And I'm like, okay.
Well, if you had gone up to the top of the ladder and then fallen, they're like, why didn't you call me?
Exactly. So, we get through it. But I do think there's, that's another adjustment that we make as we age. We have to recognize, you know what? I live alone, and what if I fell? And it would not be a good idea to do that. So it's embarrassing maybe, or in some ways you're saying to yourself, oh, I should be able to do this, but no, be smart about it. Don't put yourself at risk.
And maybe 9 times out of 10, you could do it, but
really, even if you were 40, you really should not be climbing on a ladder by yourself in a house.
Right.
No matter your age, because people fall off ladders all the time.
Yeah,
right.
At various ages. Right?
Yes. Yes. So, I mean, there are just certain things that maybe you do when you're younger because you feel invincible, but truly there are things no one should be doing, basically.
Yeah, I think that's true.
What kind of, you said you like to dance.
Yes.
And you go to the gym.
Yes.
What do you like to do? What kind of physical fitness do you enjoy?
So I go to the gym and I do different cardio, so I may do the treadmill, I may do the elliptical, I do weightlifting, and then I do a yoga class also.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I love the yoga. I'm not nearly as graceful with that as I once was, but I still love it.
Good. Yes. Well, yes. And do you eat in any particular way?
You mean, do I follow a particular diet?
Yeah. Do you follow are you like paleo or vegan or anything?
I'm
just curious.
I just try to eat healthy, like yogurt and fruit in the morning. And I'm not a big sandwich person, so I don't eat a lot of bread. I have added some carbs back. I used to not eat many carbs at all, but I have added some carbs back, particularly with the fruit, and occasionally, rice.
Oh yeah.
But I'm not a big pasta person or bread person.
Do you have a go-to recipe that, let's say, it's a really busy day and you just always have something ready that, is your instant, like something that you could share? I'm always looking for healthy dinners to throw together when I've had a tough day. So it's
Chris, you really don't want to know
your favorite recipe.
No, on a tough day. No, I may get a glass of wine, some cheese and crackers, maybe a sliced apple. I'm not cooking on a tough day.
Charcuterie board.
A charcuterie board, generally without the meat, just like some brie, crackers, apple.
Nice.
I don't cook at the end of a hard day. If I have a leftover in the refrigerator, that's a good thing.
Do you want to tell us about the coaching services you provide? I know we've sort of talked about it, but maybe you could actually tell our listeners about your coaching services.
Yeah, so I call it What's Next, and it's a 6 weeks program, and we do it as a group, and I also do it individually, and it gives people an opportunity to work through a bunch of exercises. There is homework, as I say, and then we dig into it, so it's when you do the homework, you do the best you can do, but a lot of times, as with any of these kind of self-help exercises, when you do them by yourself, you don't always go as deep. And so when you do it with a coach and I ask you, but what else? And what does that mean? And it gets you to those aha moments, like Jill was saying, it gets you to those aha moments where you go, oh yeah. And so at the end of that, they come away with a 6-month plan of what they want to try and do for the next 6 months as they progress through this transition. And then I do a monthly check-in with them. I'll drop them an email and say, hey, this is what you said you wanted to do. How's it going? Do we need to do a tune-up or, anything you need to tweak in there? Yeah. So it gets them going in a good direction. And some come back and want additional counseling, and some are just good to go. Off they go.
And this is online?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we'll put links to that in our show notes. But if our listeners want to follow you and find out more, where should they go?
So I have a website. It's called Hey, Hey, heyboomer.biz, B-I-Z. I have a Facebook page. It's Hey Boomer Podcast, and an Instagram page and a LinkedIn page. So they can follow me anywhere. Oh, YouTube also.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And your show is live on
Mondays at 1 Eastern. And then it's available on all the podcast platforms by the next day.
Nice.
Yeah, because if it's live, I don't have to do some of the editing you have to do, Jill.
Right. That's true.
Yes.
Well, we'll put links to all of those things in the show notes. So if our listeners want to follow and get a chance to jump in, and when you're live, you can actually comment live, right?
Yes, you can.
So
you
it's
can
interactive.
live.
Cool.
You can ask guests questions. If something comes up that you want to find out more about, you can put that in the comments. Yeah.
So it's heyboomer.biz and it's live on Facebook, right? 1 o'clock.
LinkedIn, and
YouTube. Great.
And I love that about it, really. I love seeing people just say hi, and people that know the guest saying, "Oh, that was so brilliant what you just said, Jill," or those kinds of things. It's fun.
Yeah, I would like to hear that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jill, that was great.
That was great, Jill. No, so it is fun to see that, because sometimes when you do the podcast, as you guys know, you're like, am I talking to myself? Is anybody listening? And so it's nice to see the immediate responses.
That's great.
So hopefully you guys will be on my show sometime.
Yeah, we'd love that.
Yes, hopefully soon.
Hopefully soon. We're looking at dates.
Thank you, Wendy, so much for talking with us today. It's been fantastic, really enjoyable.
Yeah, really enjoyed talking with you, Wendy.
Well, I appreciate you two so much. You inspire me. I listen to your show now that I know you're there, and you inspire me with what you're doing.
It's nice to encounter people doing similar things.
Yeah. And it's great to reconnect with you since we met you last month at podcast there in August. So
yeah, well, we'll have to do it again.
Looking forward to talking to you again. All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. I love talking with Wendy today. She's great at figuring out what to do next with your life.
Yes. And I really liked what she talked about, being a human being instead of a human doing. That was a clever little turn of a phrase there.
Yes.
As we prepare for our 100-year life, about the longevity of everyone at this point, being healthy just makes more sense. As much healthy as you can control, that is.
Yes, as much as you can do, both physically and mentally. I think we talked a fair amount about the effects of, maybe not of loneliness, but sort of that, but also just the vagueness that comes with if you really don't have anything to motivate you to get going every day.
Yeah, how important community is, and kind of planning through the transitions, feeling the feeling and moving into things that you find joy with and that you want to do, that you look forward to doing.
Right. Chris, I think we should tell people that we're going to be on Wendy's podcast in a couple of weeks. She does a live show, so that will be different for us.
Yes, it will. It's going to be fun to try something new. So we'll be talking with her on October 23rd at 1 p.m. Eastern time, and it's live. So if you tune in, you can watch it on Facebook Live, YouTube, or LinkedIn. All of those run it live. So
yeah. And if you watch it live, you can comment and ask questions and I guess interact with us as we're talking. So that would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
And if you don't watch it live, you can still listen to the podcast afterwards, anytime after that date. I would love to hear what our listeners have to say about today's episode or that future episode. I'd like to know how people are dealing with changes in life, because that's something we all have to deal with.
Right. Yeah. Please let us know your thoughts about setting goals and dreaming dreams.
Or just let us know how you're doing on keeping fit and strong. Leave us a message at becomingellie.com, or you can find us at Becoming Ellie on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, and LinkedIn.
Hey, Jill, it was great talking with you today. I'm looking forward to our next episode of the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast.
I am too. See you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.